First law. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. Second law. A robot must obey the orders given to it by a human being except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Third law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Fourth law. A robot may not harm humanity or, by inaction, allow humanity to come to harm. Isaac Asimov, Rules for Robotics. I didn't see you there.
It all started early this morning.
From hunting ghosts to Bigfoot, UFOs, cryptids, true crime, paranormal, and more.
I've always wanted to see a UFO.
Oh, I was researching for your entertainment.
That's Bigfoot's get.
He basically wrote the book on Monaco.
We aren't really comedians.
What if Buddha did cocaine?
The Addams Family on meth. This is the Black Cat Report.
See you on the other side. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 100 of the Black Cat Report. My name is Gil, and I'm here with the only man who ever successfully hacked the Kroger Card Rewards points system to save 50 cents or more on his next purchase of Blue Raspberry Faygo. Joey.
You know, I went with the Dr. Faygo now. I'm loving Dr. Faygo. Doing the best. You know, I used to go into Sheets and get Dr. Faygo all the time. I'm not kidding. It's actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is this? I feel like this is paid for by Dr. Pibb. Is that what you're trying to tell me? Like behind the scenes, you're working for some like discount Dr. Pepper? Complete silence.
No, I'm going with the real doctor. No, yes, crickets. Yeah, no, go with the real
Crickets.
Dr. Faygo.
Insert cricket sounds here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we wanted to do something special for our centennial, right? Something not based on the past or lost in blurry photos, cloaked behind clouds, or hiding in the back seat of your car with a knife and a God complex. We wanted to ring in the next chapter of the Black Cat Report with the present, with what's coming tomorrow or a few months or within the next few years. You see, right now, with literally whatever device you're hearing this on, you are already manipulating the future. You're training it just as it's training you. I'm speaking, of course, about artificial intelligence. And joining us here today to help us bridge the gap between our awareness, its self-awareness, and the trajectory of humankind as we're currently relearning to play with fire is my good friend, Dr. Myla Bui. Dr. Bui, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we're super stoked to have you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, along with being an absolutely incredible human being and a proud mother of two, you are also a professor of marketing in the College of Business Administration for Loyola Marymount University, located in Los Angeles. And to completely steal from your faculty bio on the LMU website, quote, Professor Bui is an award-winning researcher published at the top-tier research journals in the field of marketing and business at the national and international level. Namely, her scholarly research contributions have been published and highlighted at top research journal outlets, including the Journal of Marketing, Journal of Public Policy and Marketing, European Journal of Marketing, Journal of Advertising Research, among others. Her research and business consultancy interests include consumer judgment and decision-making, consumer well-being, health and public policy, neuroplasticity, artificial intelligence, and emerging technologies. And, quote, I would also like to add that Dr. Bui has been a member of more think tanks, research groups, studies, administrative boards, and in general, more super awesome stuff than I could ever shake a stick at. Am I forgetting anything here?
No, you're far too generous, Gil. You're far too generous.
This is the thing about this good doctor here. She is deceptively modest, so don't let her fool you on any of the. I know her. We work together.
Too generous.
Well, before we dive in, I also wanted to point something out, or to call the elephant in the room, as to why My first go-to for a conversation around AI would actually begin with marketing, right? Simply put, marketing is the relationship between science and art. Its success is measured by the choices we ask for, the decisions we make, and the nature of human interaction. I know you're a marketing professor. Feel free to correct me on that, but I feel like that's a fair summary.
Yes, you're good.
Well, thus, when we think about AI and how it will affect us, we have to ask who provides it? How will it direct our choices? And how will we decide to use it? These are all points that, frankly, we're going to be coming in contact with at the spearhead of marketing efforts across the board. That is how AI is going to come into our life. Now, with all that out of the way, Dr. Bui, I'd like to kick off our chat with the same prompt, pun intended, that we always have for our interviews, right? We're just three friends sitting around a campfire, drinking beer, chatting about things that we love to nerd out on, and discussing the questions that have kind of been kicking around in the back of our minds. So, Dr. Bui, my first question for you is based on immediate relevance. Where is AI today? Where are listeners already interacting with artificial intelligence in places they might not be aware of? And where are they contributing to the development and training of AI?
I think that is relative in many ways, depending upon which audience it is that we're referring to, right?
Okay.
To go back to the initial question of not just where we are with regards to artificial intelligence, but who it is that actually contributes to the development and or the deployment of artificial intelligence, right, is really the initial point of the conversation here, right?
Yeah.
And I think that first and foremost, we should be reminded that artificial intelligence is in fact developed by us as humans. We are the ones that create the algorithms behind artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
It's not the machine that's creating it as of yet, right? That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I am in conversation, it's almost as if artificial intelligence is referred as to a separate entity that isn't even connected to us as the humans who in fact create the algorithms and provide the data, right? That is then implemented with the use of those algorithms to deploy artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Right. So we forget that. And so that really, I want us foremost to be reminded of that, right? We push the button.
Yes.
It's not the machine pushing the button. If we wanted to make the decision to go, and this is a bad example, but it's a good one at the same time, right? If we're talking about going off on the deep end,
Yeah.
we wanted to start World War III. It's not going to be an artificial intelligence, right? An AI that's doing it. It's rather us as the human that has trained the artificial, right? Like we're the ones pushing the button, not AI. Let's be clear on that, right? That is where we are, right?
Yeah.
For now. But I think that, that in some ways sets the tone for how we look at this phenomenon from a micro versus a macro perspective, right? From a micro level perspective, we're looking at this from the lens of us as humans, the lens of us as consumers, perhaps. From a macro level, we are perhaps looking at, pillars within our society that creates a culture and a structure that may include organizations, right?
Yeah.
The industry, it may include societal influences, it may include government, federal, right? Sorts of pillars.
Yeah.
It may also include technological and innovative, right? And innovation forms of pillars. So, and I'm just giving you a very broad framework of where it is that artificial intelligence touches upon, right? It's a full ecosystem. And so that's what I mean by it really depends upon with which audience are we referring to.
Yeah.
Let's start with the micro level. If we take a look at the individual level, my sense on this is that there are fewer individuals that are aware of where we are with regards to advances of artificial intelligence than there are people who are not, right? There's fewer for now.
So to clarify around that, you're saying that you think that a majority of people are aware, or you're saying that a majority of people aren't aware?
The latter.
So a majority of people are not aware about how far it's not how far, we are. It's like literally this is right now while you're listening to this podcast. This is where you're at. AI is your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And a lot of folks aren't aware of how far it's come.
Correct. Correct. Because I don't think that most people sit around, right?
Yeah.
And pontificate, right?
Yeah.
Well, artificial intelligence and where we are. I think that those conversations are often prompted when a problem comes up,
Yes.
right? Or some type of conflict comes up in their life, in their work that serves as a challenge, perhaps, that they might overcome.
Yeah.
That is when,
People remember it exists.
that is when people are prompted, right? That's when they're cued.
Yeah.
That's when they're cued in. Another example is that you don't realize, let's say you don't realize that you're allergic to something.
Yep.
Right?
Pineapple.
You don't realize you're allergic to
Pineapple
something.
for me.
Yeah, right? Okay, pineapple, right? So
Yep.
Joey doesn't realize that he's allergic to pineapple until he has it. Next thing you know it, he breaks out in a rash. But until he actually sees the symptoms, he's not going to realize, right? He's not being cued in. So I think that people are aware, and they're slowly becoming more and more aware, whether that be through challenges that might emerge in their everyday life, in their work, right, in their personal lives or whatnot. It may be cultural, it may be social, it may be what it is, that they are seeing on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Shows and movies that are coming out. Or it could be that they come across this, on the news, for example, right?
Yeah.
So the question becomes, well, how much momentum is actually needed before the masses, are actually aware, right? But
Yeah.
they're not going to be aware until there are going to be cues like Joey, like a rash after eating pineapples, that he's going to start to ask questions.
Yeah.
So that is from the very micro level. But I think, and when we extrapolate and look at it from a broader scale of the different types of social structures that are also in place, from organizational to social cultural to public policies and government as well as technology, then that's a completely different level. Because at that level, that is where, for example, I'll just pick government public policy. So last year, the White House issued an executive order that basically sets up a framework and guidelines for how we need to consider ethical development and deployment of artificial intelligence. So just think about it. You and I, right, normal consumers, we don't worry about those things until, that might affect me in terms of my work or whatnot. But then when an executive order comes out, right, when there are regulation that comes out, then that's where the needle starts to move, right?
Okay.
That is where a certain level of awareness is going to be facilitated. Why? Because the second that the White House puts out an executive order, what's going to happen is that there are going to be resources that are going to be maneuvered in such a way where it would facilitate. Right? It would facilitate those sorts of initiatives. So the second that decisions are made at that higher level, at that macro level, right?
Yeah.
Then it has the ability to then touch other areas, other industries, other sectors. So for example, I'm in the R&D world.
Yeah.
And, the research that we just published this past week, due to the fact that there was an executive order that then creates the gap, right, in terms of the demand for the understanding of artificial intelligence. So if you think about it, if there was not the guidelines that serves as calls to duty that would warrant research, right? R&D in this space, it would not have come on our radar as scientific researchers. And at the same time, is not just scientific researchers that are asking questions and exploring. Then you also have other outlets that allows for that facilitation. So now you're going to have different journals and different outlets that are going to seek and also nurture the development of those sorts of research. So it's as an example for you, right? At that level, they are going to be much more attuned into the potential implications of what artificial intelligence may or may not do. Why? Because those are sorts of organizations, in order for them to thrive and in order for them to be able to facilitate what it is that they do, that essentially sets the tone. It sets the stage for what is to come.
So you touched on 90% of the questions that we wanted to run through here, or at least like the conceptual frameworks of bases. So it's awesome to know that we're all literally on the same page because we have points that we want to hit around that. And please, nobody let me forget, I want to get to RISE, which is recent work that you have quite literally, your name is on the release, your name is on the peer-reviewed paper, and that specifically is around developing guidelines for both domestic and international implementation, direction, development, and the evolution of AI. If I could simplify that down, and please correct me later when we get into it. I'm always okay with being corrected by the professor here. By Dr. Professor. But something that you mentioned early on, and obviously 100% everything that you said, yes, like, you know, when that White House or when that government policy kind of gets announced, it officially locks eyes onto artificial intelligence. All of a sudden, it's not just, you know, like people playing around with Pokemon Go. It's not just some tool that's just, you know, people are playing around and it's fun and it's a little thing it's like, no, this is serious. And honestly, you know, to kind of acknowledge capitalism here, that means a lot of government contracts, which means a lot of industries, which means a lot of professionals, which means legal agencies, which means developers, which means like that's a huge, like, that is a shift in the economy when a statement like that comes down. We are acknowledging it as an entity, and we are focused on it, and we are working on understanding it, which tells shit tons of people all over the place, we need to put eyes on this now. You know, officially, we need to put eyes on this. But something that you had said kind of early on, you mentioned around humans that we are the ones that are training it, that are creating AI. And that is something I really strongly believe people should be aware of. You might not have that issue, right? That impetus, that moment where you have a problem and you hit a brick wall and you're like, how do I solve this? Oh yeah, AI exists. And you go and you look for the perfect prompt to solve it for you, right? But you are constantly training it with every single moment of, honestly, it doesn't even have to be intentional digital impact or digital use. It could just be you're walking down the street with your phone in your pocket, right? Or you wake up at 3 a.m. and you check your Instagram. Or you set your alarm on your phone to a certain time, and your Fitbit is reporting all of your metadata because you probably didn't go through and you got it and turn off that little part that says, is it okay if we share this information with Apple? You know, like, most folks don't actually go through the privacy policies on their devices and they're like, I ain't giving you shit, you know, and like go down the list and turn that off. That metadata is contributing to the training of artificial intelligence. And I can guarantee you, if that data hasn't been added to the training of artificial intelligence, it very soon will be. That data gets stored, it gets put into banks, and it is worth so much money. But with all that said, stepping back just a little bit farther, let's start off with I'm throwing a softball pitch here. I'm throwing what is it, an overhand or an underhand? I forget which one's the easier one to... You can punt this, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't understand sports. But can AI be biased? Right? So if so, how can this issue be addressed? So what are the sources of bias in AI systems, right? And
Right.
what role do developers and researchers play in minimizing bias? We have to acknowledge this is a human-made technology, right? It might be doing its own thing and going nuts and all this other fun stuff, but we're the ones that programmed it.
You got
And
it.
guess what? We're fucking biased. So what around AI and bias?
So this is a massively controversial topic when you're talking about bias. You're absolutely correct, Gil. We are the ones who train the AIs.
Yeah.
And we come full of bias.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether they be ones that we are aware of and or ones that are implicit, the ones we are unaware of.
Yeah.
Right? Our own implicit biases. And that goes into the actual training of the algorithms that are created. So therefore, you will naturally have algorithms and artificial intelligence that are biased due to the fact that who's the trainer?
Yep.
We are.
Yeah.
Yep.
And last I checked, we have not been as successful, right, in either uncovering our own biases. That's why there's an entire literature on implicit bias.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we also have to consider not only the biases, whether explicit or implicit, we also have to think about the lack of normal distribution in who it is that actually trains artificial intelligence.
So we have to think about the diversity behind the actual developers that are training.
Correct.
Okay.
And so far, from a social cultural perspective, yes, we have moved forward when you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily there yet, right?
Yeah. Tends to be some issues.
Yeah, there tends to be some issues here and there.
Tiny bit.
Tiny bit, right? So all of this then has implications for the development of artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
So we see, two sectors that are highlighted, great examples, and we saw this as examples coming out of the executive order, the housing, right? The housing sector as well as criminal justice, right?
Yeah.
If you take a look at facial recognition software, artificial intelligence, right? It is trained by what types of data going in. There's a certain race, there's a certain gender, there's a certain profile that there are just more data of, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that data is going to be accurate in depicting whomever the offender is, but it is using a backlog of all that data, right? That informs its choice, you see?
Yeah.
So it increases the probability of misinformation, right? That might be put out there. And we see this, that this is why we see this with criminal justice. We see the same issues when it comes to housing sector, home ownership among different demographics, right? Right? So these are just two examples for you when we take a look at the potential implications of biases. So while we are already in a state of where artificial intelligence is being proactively pursued, invested in massive levels of resources, as we see across the tech industry, right? We see this across the tech industry. We see this on the market, the stock market. We see where all the investments, where the returns are happening, particularly within this year. We've seen how fast how well it's done just in this year alone. And if you think about it, just 2 years ago, not even 3 years ago, right?
Nothing.
We were thinking there's no way we're coming back anytime soon. It's going to be a bloodbath. Look at where we are, right? How fast it is that we have rebounded, right?
We're only a year since GPT 3.5 or something like that, or GPT 3 by OpenAI. The actual, if we want to start talking about what is being considered in the modern context, and please correct me at any point if I'm wrong. You were in our house, but you were welcome to correct. Please correct me.
Yes.
But we're coming up on 1 year since kind of AI has fully gone public. Let me try to phrase it that way. it was very much limited to small niche tech nerdy audiences like myself and yourself, like small like niche field like interests, right? And we were like, whoa, look at this tool, this is super cool, wow, I could do all this crazy shit, wow, this is nuts, like that was kind of a year ago, 2 years ago. It's been, this is such a it's been so fast. And now I just saw I can never pronounce the name, Nvidia.
NVIDIA.
Did you see this article as well?
NVIDIA.
They just surpassed, I believe it was Amazon and Tesla, I want to say,
Market cap.
because of their investment and their focus on artificial intelligence.
Right.
A computer chip manufacturing company just outpaced Papa Bezos and Elon Musk at the same damn time. And they are skyrocketing, and there is no end in sight. You are doing well if you were invested in them yesterday.
Yes.
Like, this shit is big. And guess who's going to be buying from them? Tesla and Amazon and all the other people that just got their ass kicked, right, in the stock market. It's computer chip developers. It's the folks that are creating AI models to be trained on sets of data. That sets of data, it comes from us. Right. And just as you were saying around like diversity and inclusion and like the prevention of, or at least the training away of like biases and things like that. Well, that's where the data comes from. And that's something, and I hate if I'm just kind of like beating a dead horse here, like saying this over and over again, but something I really do strongly feel across the board is that any fear that we have of AI is a fear of ourselves. End of story. That is a fear of us. It might be amplified, right? It might be multiplied. It might be more efficient, but it is coming from us. We are the ones that are pushing these models and these things like that. If it's facial recognition programs, which were already having troubles back in the early 2000s with, which literally, I mean, like, I know, I think it was in China, with their facial recognition program, they literally thought every single black person was the same person. Like, it was like so like obviously like, this is a problem. This is like, they're just not. And then it was like, oh, look at the staff of the people behind it who actually programmed it. Well, that makes sense. And those data models then feed into training AI. Like, we have to be concerned with that. But that at the start does come from our own shit, our own issues around the place. But I don't know. What are your thoughts around that?
I think that's a great point, Gil. We forget that we're the ones providing the data.
Yeah.
We are also forgetting the importance of knowing who we are as humans. And I would have to say that it has a lot to do with the environment that we are in, to be very honest with you. It has so much to do with the fact that, let's say, for example, my own kids, right? They were born into a world where, my 10 and my 11-year-old at school, they use laptops and computers and they have access to, right, all the technology. And, back in the day, I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that was not normal.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so they, you have younger generations that, I think that it's really important for older generations to be reminded of the fact that the younger generation did not have the opportunities that we had to live a simpler life. We didn't have that. We were believe it or not, we were privileged with that, because once you start to strip away all the fluff, right?
Yeah.
You're better able to access who you are as a human being because you're not distracted. Number one, right?
Yeah. Damn.
And, when you take a look at younger generations, we also cannot blame them, for what we created, right?
Yeah. Damn good point. Yeah.
Right? We contributed to that creation and that innovation and that level of advancement. But I think that it really does, it comes back to the point of where the world that we are living in takes away more and more opportunities to to know who we are as humans.
Mm.
And I think that is one really important point to consider. But I also think that in all fairness, we also have to consider all of the distractions that are a part of our life, right? We are in a machine, right? We are in a capitalistic machine that is designed in such a way that we contribute to that data, providing that data.
Yeah.
And it also has a lot to do with the fact that we are incentivized to do so.
I've got a question, and I know for a fact you're going to understand this immediately, but Joey, let me know if I need to backtrack and explain what the hell this is, if it's coming across too abstract. Are we being limited by measurement? Is the human experience across the different I saw the head shake. I think we're on the same page on that. But that's what you just kind of inspired in thoughts for me, is the human experience, because you and I work in marketing. Yeah. Obviously, we handle that shit. I'm the one that's kind of out there in the data mines, just chipping away, and I'm bringing the ore to you, and you're processing it, and you're finding the diamonds and polishing them and handing them off, down the line. That's kind of if I had to apply a scenario to like our kind of our professional relationship, I would say it's fairly close. I'm like, hey, this is what we can measure, and this is what we can do.
Yeah.
Now, here's the trick, though, with that. Here's the reason why I say, are we being limited by measurement? I'm saying, here's what we can measure, right? And then you're saying, oh, well, shit, I would love information on this, right? Like, and this is, we've had that conversation a million times, like we've thought about it. You're like, can you get this and can you get that? And I'm like, well, maybe we could do this and do that. I then have the conversation with the designer. I then have a conversation with the developer. I then have a conversation with the content writer. I then have a conversation with branding. I then have a conversation with the director, the chief marketing officer, and we narrow down the variables of interaction in order to set up a situation where we can collect data. Mm-hmm. We literally do that. Mm-hmm. Like that is what you and I get paid to figure out, so like we do that shit. And, we're not the ones that invented our careers, right? So like this is happening across the board, across all of digital experience, and I would argue immediately non-digital experience, and just in terms of the way that, the same way that an architect goes into a building and they're like, there needs to be this many fire escapes because this is going to have a capacity of this many people and they're going to behave in this way. And when they panic, they're going to run this direction, which is why there needs to be a red sign that's pointed here, that's set up on batteries when the power goes out. Like the longer humans human, right? Yeah. The more that folks nerd out into these directions and the more advanced that they become. We have to look, and my argument would be, we have to look at the digital landscape in the exact same way. So just as we are going through, and the common person that's listening to this that's not in digital marketing, they're flipping burgers, they're making pizza, they're driving a semi right now, they're operating a forklift, they're running a retail shop, they're selling air conditioning as a local service, and like all of these are examples of actual listeners that listen to the show, right? I know this. Those folks are contributing to the data, and we on another end, because we exist in a digital landscape, right? Mm-hmm. Or we manipulate it. We 100% do. I would say I do. We're trying to narrow down their experience to points of data collection, right? For our marketing purpose and intent, which means those points of data collection then feed in to training AI models and systems. So, and I fucking love the way you put that at the beginning there in your last response, which was that we were privileged because we didn't have all these limitations. And it almost felt like to me like it was an expression of like, remember when we could detach ourselves? Like that's kind of what it felt like when you were saying that. And I'm just like, fuck, we're in charge of attaching people, but attaching people in the areas we want to measure.
Correct.
So we're actively limiting that free range of human expression.
Correct. Yes.
And I don't know. I just had a moment where I was just, you blew my mind, Doctor. You absolutely blew my mind. I was like, fuck, it was my fault. You know?
No,
but yeah.
No, I absolutely agree with you here. And it's a great point that you're making, right? Because when we are really talking about that privilege, right?
Yeah.
That privilege, it's like a muscle, I feel, right?
Yep.
What differentiates us, within the animal kingdom from other animal species is our ability to think about our thinking, right?
Yeah.
It's the metacognitive component that we have as an animal species compared to others.
Yeah.
And I think that is also, it's a muscle. And if it's like any muscle that one doesn't use, what happens? It atrophies.
Yeah.
And so if we are not given the opportunities to step outside of ourselves and think about our own thinking, over time, we're less likely to do it. We then lose, right? We lose what it is that makes us distinct from other animal species.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's going to happen straight away. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that we should start to consider what those implications might be when what's happening is, if you take a look at technological advances and at the rate with which artificial intelligence is being expedited, take a look at how far we have come just within the last 2 years of artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, take a look at humans. How much have we changed in the last century?
Not shit.
We don't
since way
change.
before the pyramids.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying, right? So there is this gap between humanity and technology that continues to separate, right? It becomes wider and wider and wider and wider. And we, once again, this is why these sorts of conversations are warranted.
Yeah.
And it needs to be ones that open up for further questions. There needs to be more questions that people should be thinking about, they should be asking, right? We're not necessarily here to provide, I never feel like I am anywhere to provide any solutions in many ways. I think that my role and my growth is more so contingent upon my ability to ask.
Yeah.
To ask the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like ChatGPT, it just gives you the answers right away. So then what's happening is that we are now learning how to unlearn. Unlearn how to learn is essentially what's happening.
Thank you so much
Right?
for saying that. And Joey, I swear to God, I want to let you hop in. I'm sorry. We're kind of like making you third wheel here because
I love this. I love this. It's great.
Dr. Bui, I don't think you and I have ever had a half an hour meeting that didn't last 3 hours because we both love to geek out so fast. Don't tell any of our employers this. But immediately we're like, oh my God. But it's true. It is true.
I know nothing about this.
I'm ordering food. Oh my God, that's a good idea. And we're just sitting there talking. No, but no. So this is something that I've noticed too, and like I guarantee you, I can almost guarantee you. I think you probably feel the same way. I've never talked about this kind of weird feeling that I've gotten, but when I use AI, I'm immediately recognizing a loss in the quality of me. And it's not because the answer is given to me. I Google shit all the fucking time. That's not it. It's because I have learned to Google and to dig and to then use my own discretion in processing the answers and the results and the way that I search for answers and results. And the things, honestly, and I really want to emphasize this, what I discovered that I didn't know while searching. And that all becomes a recipe for how Gil answers a question, for how Gil researches, for how Gil grows as an individual. That shit's nobody reads the sources. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter if ChatGPT's being like, and here's our references. You ain't fucking checking them. Like, let's be fucking real here. Like, 90% of the time, you're just like, yeah, okay, thanks, whatever, bye. Like, you don't give a fuck. Dude, when you get a pizza at the grocery store and you throw it in your oven, are you really reading every ingredient? I doubt that. You're just kind of like, hey, This is the flavor I like. You get it, and I feel like
Uh-huh.
ChatGPT is kind of teaching us to research, discover, and learn in the same way. And not just ChatGPT, but just AI in general is teaching us to approach shit the same way. I am wary with like research for the show and things of the atrophy you were speaking about, because I know when I start with a concept, with an idea for an episode, and kind of get an outline of what I want to look into, how I want to approach it, whatever. And that's a thing too, is I'll go in with my own bias ahead of time, whatever makes me excited about a topic for an episode. But as I start researching, I discover there's something else here. There's something else here. Oh shit, there's this. Oh shit. Why is nobody talking about this? Right? I come to my own conclusions, and that is the passion, that is the joy, right? But ChatGPT or other AI models, they're just like, hey, this is the common line. This is the party theme. Like, this is what everybody's saying around this, and why you should do it. And these are all the popular resources, and these are the slightly obscure ones. But it's all so formulaic, and it kills the soul behind it.
Absolutely.
Can I jump in real quick, actually, and
Please.
defend AI on this?
Oh, gosh.
Which is going to
All
sound
right.
weird. So the
Oh,
way you're describing it is the difference between going to the library and going through each book and finding your answers, because you're doing the same thing. You're going to a more physical place. AI is basically congregating all this information for you, making it easy for you, just like going on the internet is doing the same thing, because Google is also doing the same thing that the AI is doing. It's congregating all this work that you typed in, which you would be doing at the library. If you went to the library, you could have seen 6 to 7 books in the same section and read all those books. You would be doing the same thing. Your growth is being hampered by the internet. Your growth, it's like slowly becoming less you, because you're sitting at home instead of going to the library. So what I'm saying is, like, slowly with each technological advance, and this is what kind of the argument behind technological advances is, like, you're becoming less you because the technology is doing more of the work for you. And so AI is doing more of the work.
We're defined by our mistakes.
Yeah, and ChatGPT is defined by us.
Well, ChatGPT delivers answers.
Yeah.
Right? But humans are defined by their mistakes and how they overcome them. At least in part. I don't know. Doctor, hop in here.
Yeah.
We're going to go on a rant if you don't stop.
Yeah.
So let me take this from a well-being perspective.
Okay.
If we take a look at the pillars of our well-being,
Yeah.
in part, how we grow and how it is that we fully experience the human experience, right?
Yeah.
Is actually through the process, right? So we hear this all the time. The notion of it's not about the end result, it's about the process.
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is, from a process standpoint, going through the actual process, we as humans, we always seek, you see it all around us. They always say, we want you to be happy, or they're selling happiness, right? But the truth
Right.
of the matter is, it is a natural part of the human experience not to all the time feel happiness. Why? Because our well-being is also contingent upon the fact that there are challenges, not ones that are too difficult and not ones that are too easy, but just right, that allows us to push ourselves. And it's through that process of pushing yourself, right, where you are then receiving the reward.
Yeah.
And that reward is the reinforcer, right, behind the positive affective emotions and thinking, judgment, right, that is produced, that then that contributes to your overall well-being. So what I'm interpreting from what Gil is suggesting here is that it is stripping away a part of the process that he would like to be engaged in, because in some odd way, he likes a little bit of the pain, right?
Yeah,
Like
100%.
actually, right? Like we need a little pain in order to feel good, believe it or not, right?
It's the challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
So it strips away that challenge. But I think that, with that being said, I also want to highlight the fact that in all areas of life, there are pros and cons, just like artificial intelligence. And when I sit down with the executives in the tech space, in the top tech space, you will find that a common theme emerges among these individuals. That common theme is the ability for us to adapt.
Yes.
Why does Google, right? Why does Google, why does Meta, right? Like all these tech companies, how do they continue to grow and thrive? They continue to grow and thrive because guess what? They embrace these changes. They embrace the innovation, right? So artificial intelligence, it's an area where it has its cons and it has its pros as well, right?
100%.
It's really, it's kind of like another great example is like a strategy. A strategy, depending upon which context you're using, is a great strategy or not so great of a strategy. Depends upon the context. It's the same thing with artificial intelligence, innovation, emerging, you name it, right? How is it being used? How is it being developed? How is it being deployed? Is it being developed and deployed in an ethical and in a responsible way? But I think that we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we are at the beginning stages of this revolution in many ways, right?
Yeah.
And at the beginning stages, there's chaos. That's just the way it is.
Hey.
That's the way it is.
It's
right?
true.
And it's going to take some chaos, right? That's going to elicit questioning and therefore then elicit wisdom.
It's a learning curve.
It's a learning, right? It's a steep learning curve, right? So that's why, I don't think that the point of this conversation here is to bash artificial intelligence in any way.
Not at all.
Right? It really should be, I feel, about bringing to a certain level of awareness what the implications of artificial intelligence might be, for humanity, for the world. How might it serve us in meaningful ways? And I think that is where it is going to be critical that we focus on how it can serve for the betterment of society.
Yeah.
Right? But in order for us to better understand what that might look like, absolutely, we need to take a look at the implications of how it is that it might not serve us. But again, it's two sides of the coin that one has to consider.
And this is why I kind of fall back to at the beginning when I was saying we're relearning how to discover fire. Humans just resplit the atom within the past few years, and we're becoming aware of that right now. How are we going to handle it? And I will say that right now the U.S. is already getting pissed off. Speaking of going back earlier to Washington mandates and things like that, right? To White House mandates and to the government. The U.S. is already pissed at China because it's using AI for weapons. This is already a criticism that's happening. If you go look at the recent kind of wagging that's going on the border with Taiwan, China's got AI robot dogs with machine guns attached to their head.
We've got AI drones. Just making the comparison.
I mean, that when we take a look at international affairs, we don't know, how far artificial intelligence is going to go, right? I don't think that we can fully imagine its capabilities as of yet. But with that being said, I also feel that business, the markets, politics, you name it, it's all intersected, right? And with that level of intersectionality, I think that it is going to be difficult for any nation, right, to seriously consider going to war, right? Simply because resources are allocated all over the world. So to bomb one nation versus another, they're also stripping away resources that are likely going to be advantageous to their country or to their nation, right? So I think that there is going to be a certain level of calculation that comes into place if and or when we get to that stage. But then I also think that it's really important for us to also take a step back and take a look at the capabilities of what artificial intelligence can do. Because so much of the data prior, right, in the literature rests upon decisions that are made, but based more so on cognition, thinking, right? Action, what they choose, what did they buy, things of that nature, that form of judgment, how they process.
Okay.
And less of the literature rests upon actual emotions. But when we take a look at humans and how it is that we go to make decisions, some underestimate the weight that emotions actually play a role in how we choose to make decisions, right? How we go about making decisions. Because think about it, how well are we in control of our emotions? I don't know about you guys, but I completely suck at it, because that's the reason why we fall in love with the people we probably shouldn't fall in love with, for example,
Oh,
right? But, the why really boils down more so to the emotional functionings. The how and the what has more so to do with the cognition, right? Our thinking through it. So there's a lot of data that sits there in prior literature. But what is interesting to now seriously think about is that there are data everywhere that maps to how it is that we respond emotionally. And I can and I can tell you this because I'm one of the researchers behind that, right? One of the projects that I'm working on right now deals with natural language processing. And it's a form of machine learning where we scrape the internet and reviews in order to, number one, identify the different forms of emotions, code each of the emotions in terms of what it is that they might look like, and then also take a look at the actual outputs. In other words, when those emotions are triggered, what are the consumers actually doing? So the more and more data that we get access to, which is not difficult to get because we can just scrape the internet for that, for those reviews, that informs the machine of being able to identify, define which emotion is being elicited in among the individual, and then how is it that the marketing environment can be used as a medium to facilitate an output or a behavior that the marketer would want.
Sentiment analysis.
Sentiment analysis, correct. So then, if you really think about it, artificial intelligence is now able, in many ways to capture, understand through the codes that we put in place for the different forms of emotion, and also now help not just us as scientific researchers to understand these different forms of emotions and how, what facilitates certain types of behaviors, certain types of actions. It's also the machine. So it's those areas where I can see, because I remember in the beginning stages of my career, from my PhD all the way into the first decade of my career in academia, where there wasn't a lot of research at all, right, in the emotion space. Why? Because in order to capture an emotion, it's a lot harder to measure.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like happiness, sadness, right? It's a lot harder to pinpoint, to put a number, right? To assign a quantifiable number to that emotion, right? But here with artificial intelligence, that's going to change all that. So then the question becomes, what are the implications of this? Right? So straight away, oftentimes people think automatically, if you're in business, if you're in marketing, oh, you're on the dark side and you're looking, to get, right? You're looking to manipulate people, into, consuming whatever. But the reality is, what I feel that the general population as a whole aren't necessarily aware of the larger demographic of social marketers that are out there, that are actually doing research on combating the negative implications of any type of, it's not just technology, it's anything in our environment, right? Okay. And I think that, again, it goes to show you once again, right? Like where do we really want to focus our attention on? And then you also have to think about, what type of access does the general population as a whole get with regards to artificial intelligence? The news, the reason why people watch the news is they're actually looking for bad news.
Yeah.
Right? Like if it's not bad, people don't really want it, right? Like you don't often see happy news, right? It's right. It's right. And so what is more likely to attract attention is the negativity. right? Because we are attracted to topics that stir some type of emotion in us. And if you understand emotions, there are different forms of emotions that then triggers certain types of responses. So for example, the news, oftentimes it's negative. Why is it negative? Because not only does it attract, it also enrages you in some way, or it pisses you off in some way. It's controversial in some way. And guess what? You need that controversy in order for that individual that's consuming that media to take action, to become more involved. Because guess what? If you were happy-go-lucky and everything was, just wonderful, rainbows and unicorns, it is highly unlikely that you are going to move, that you are going to take action.
Yeah.
Right? And what do we want? We want action.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, from the media perspective. So you have to ask those questions too. Like you have to ask the questions of what sorts of access or, are people getting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think that it's really critical, and it's a part, right? This is a part of the metacognitive ability that we have to step outside of ourselves and start asking those questions.
Yeah.
And that, again, it's part of a muscle. And so that's why I also feel that, yes, there is now an entire area that's building out when you're taking a look at defining emotions, capturing emotions, and understanding how emotions play a role in decision making. But I think it's also critical that we ask the questions, well, we as humans, generally, I don't know about you guys, I should speak for myself, not the general population or you guys, I completely suck. I completely suck at telling my emotions what to do or how to feel.
Yeah.
Right? My emotions my emotions tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Not the other way around. So, given that, that is an area where we could use a little bit of help. If we were to train artificial intelligence to serve us in a very purposeful, meaningful way that facilitates our well-being, right? Facilitates the positive things that we want out of life, that would be incredible as well. So you see, that's why I really think that, we really want to encourage whomever it is that is listening to this podcast to start asking those questions, right? Of what type of access to information have they been given? And are they asking themselves those questions of where is it that the information that they are getting, where is that coming from?
Yes.
Tracing that back. But it's about the metacognitive of our capabilities as an animal species to go above and beyond other animal species.
To recognize ourselves.
Recognize ourselves. It really goes back to knowing who we are. The farther away we get from knowing who we are, I genuinely feel that is where humanity will be in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, I genuinely feel that.
So thinking about the bias behind AI that we talked about in the beginning, and knowing who is running it, knowing who's building the algorithms to feed all of this. It's just like Facebook is going to show you stuff that you agree with, but it's also going to piss you off because they want to do both. They want you to agree and be pissed off. The same going for AI and perceiving these market shifts, perceiving all this is all about what you're looking for in the data, basically, because it's just scouring for data. That's what AI is doing, right? And what's controlling is the algorithms and the prompts that the person is putting in for the information they're looking for. So how does that feed into the way it's moving into the future? And with you talking about how we're getting further away from ourselves.
We're really talking about the design and the deployment of artificial intelligence, I think is what you're asking, right? It's a mirror. It's a mirror. It's a mirror onto who we are and where we are. I think that the algorithms that are being designed, the algorithms that are being deployed is really contingent upon how we see ourselves, like a mirror. It's a reflection of who we are, right? The more that we are unaware of who we are, understanding who we are, guess what? That's exactly going to be how the AI is going to be designed.
Yeah.
Right? The closer it is that we get to who we are as humans, the closer the artificial intelligence will be designed. This is not a topic where there are going to be objective, systematic, prescriptive types of solutions that, let's be real, that anybody can sit there and talk about. I honestly think that if they were, they're full of, BS.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that at the end of the day, it serves as a mirror onto who we are and where we are, in what space, in what time, in the belief systems that we have, whether good, bad, right, wrong, whatever that might look like. So I don't know if that really answers your question, Joey, or probably made you, ask more questions.
I love it. That's the best way. Got to ask all the questions and keep going.
I hope you all enjoyed part 1 of our interview with Dr. Myla Bui. Part 2 will be coming out a little later this week. In that episode, we'll be diving into how we can avoid the doomsdays we've been taught to fear and a few of the warning signs already beginning to show on our horizon.